Hi, everyone. Welcome to Radiant Living, Inspiring Humanity to Thrive. I'm your host, Marisa B. Today, I'd like to welcome international award-winning rainbow fantasy artist, as well as artist of the Fae, Linda Biggs. Hi, Linda. Thank you so much for coming today.
Hi, Marissa. Thank you for having me.
I think this is wonderful, and it's such a wonderful topic. The first thing I want to ask you is, of course, how is it that you got involved, first of all, with art and then with your subject matter?
Um, it's an easy and complicated answer. Since I was teeny tiny, like 6 years old, I saw fairies. People could say I was crazy, and I didn't care. In my mind, I saw them and I would draw them. I mean, as a child, everywhere I was drawing Thumbelina or whoever my friend was at the moment, and it never stopped. So there was never really a and I think it will end when I die because I see no time that I won't be doing this. I have done it. I guess I started doing it professionally after my children were born, but prior to that, like my entire youth, I spent cutting classes in high school, hiding in the art room, and my art teacher covering for me saying, "Don't worry about it. You don't need those other subjects."
Mhm,
And it was true. I didn't care,
mhm.
and this is what I've always done.
And so, but your artwork also, even though it's of the Fae, it's reflective of your life. And
Yes,
you actually add that in. First of all, can you explain what medium do you work in? Or do you have a preferred medium or
sure.
do you use a number of them?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to give props to the company's paint that I use because in my mind, it is the best paint in the world. I have used it as long as I can remember, and it's not for children; it's for grown-ups. Um, the brand is Holbein or Holbein. I don't even know how the
Okay,
proper way to
yes.
say it. But these paints, they're watercolors. I've always used watercolors. They're so
Mhm,
portable. This is just like, to me, this is gold. Like I
mhm,
could lose everything in the house, but I need this.
mhm.
This stuff is magic. So that's what I use. I've used watercolors my whole life, and I never had formal training except for my high school art teacher. His name is was James Drake Imes. He was an older man, and he painted in watercolors, and it was, to me, it was magic. And he showed me some do's and don'ts, and then from there, that's all
Mhm.
I've ever done. I mean, like if someone says like they need a sign or something, yeah, I can throw some together in acrylic, but I don't like it. So it's always watercolor.
And it's funny because watercolor, they say, according to the
They
experts and
say,
other artists, that it's very difficult to work in. Very
they
difficult.
say,
And you need a lot
and
of control, right? You need a lot of control because it can become very watery and the colors in order to have them vibrant. Because and your work is vibrant and your work makes people smile and be
oh,
happy. And
thank
so
you.
it's cheery um and that takes a lot of control, I'm assuming, to get those colors that vibrant.
It is true, and that's the one reason why I like this brand is because their pigments are so saturated,
Mhm.
but I paint so heavily saturated. And it's funny, like long, long, long ago when I thought it was important to like belong to societies and clubs and all that stuff when I was young and stupid, um, I tried applying for the Baltimore Watercolor Society. And I'll never forget the heartbreaking letter I got telling me, you don't really do it right. You need to learn the process before you can be one of us. Well, I was
Wow.
like, fuck you. I mean, I was young and mouthy. Well, I still am mouthy, but, and I thought to myself, how dare you? I mean, this is in my mind, this is how I see it.
Yes.
So why do I need a protocol? And then from that moment on, I was like, I don't need to be in a club. I don't need to be in it. I'll just do my
Mhm.
thing, stay in my lane, and do it my way, and it worked. What I do, and you're right. Most people will say that watercolor is the most difficult of all painted mediums.
Mhm.
Um, I paint in a way that it's called wet in wet, so it's almost like double painting. Um, Before I apply the color, wherever I'm applying the color, I apply water, plain
Mhm.
water, usually clean water.
Mhm.
It gets dirty very fast, but water to the surface. Then I take the brush, totally saturated in the color, dip it in the water on the paper, and then
Mhm.
it does its thing. So it's
Mhm.
funny because it's like a loss of control, because once you put it on the paper, it does what
Yes.
it's going to do. You can't change it,
Mhm.
but my control is I know where I'm putting it, so I anticipate how it's going to spread. So yeah, and I am a control freak. So yeah, it's like this control, loss of control, control, loss of control. But over the years, I've honed in how to make it work for the way I paint.
So now, I just mentioned before, you do put your life into the work. So even though everything is bright and cheery, it's not always bright and cheery, though. Can you explain a little bit about that? Because you have gone through life, as we all have.
Right. And I'm not a spring chicken. So there are quite full of very, very, very dark themed pieces, which
Mhm.
in hindsight, they have been my best, most collected pieces ever. And back at the time when I would paint them, I was like, I don't get this. But I would paint the most horrid scene, which was my life, how I was seeing it playing out at the moment in the most bright rainbow colors, because we all go through it. I mean, I don't care who you are, we all go through it. And if you've gone through it yet, you're going to go through it before you get to the end. And you're going to go through it again and again and again.
Mhm.
And back when I started doing that, when I realized it doesn't always have to be the sweet little picture that everybody's anticipating. Um, it was a real connection, because someone that else had gone through something that maybe not the same thing, but something that felt as gut wrenching, was like, holy crap, that's how I felt.
Mhm.
And then that kind of, and it's interesting that you said that, because in the beginning, when I first started doing that part,
Mhm.
all of a sudden, my work was being um, collected by people for memorial pieces. And I
Mhm.
couldn't understand. I was young. I was like, I didn't get it. And it was very flattering and touching, but I didn't get it. But then as I got older, it made
Mhm.
much more sense to me. But yeah, I paint it all. And there's just every single one, except for maybe three or four pieces out there that were just fluff. Um, have a real life story that goes with it. And that was
And
once I
of course,
started
they're
doing it.
relatable,
That
right?
was
They're
right,
relatable, right? Relatable
right.
to human beings.
Once I realized that I was going to do this for a long time, I was like, you know what? I suck at writing. I'm allergic to words, but if I can paint the story, the whole thing is going to be played out. And like you could look at it and go, holy shit, you did what? Um, but it's I would not trade this for any amount of money on the planet. Having the ability to do this freely without, I don't give a shit what anybody thinks, kind of attitude, it's been the most freeing thing I've ever done.
Now, have you always had that attitude, or did that develop over
Yeah,
time?
no, I had it as a little kid. I had it. I was a brat growing up. I mean, my poor mother. My mother was so. My mother didn't swear. My mother, she was such a sweet little saint, and I was a tomboy. Swear. I think I learned my first swear words in like the second grade, and it was so empowering using and it was so weird. I was like this angry little rebel. And I was like that probably up until I was a young adult. And then I was like, oh yeah, you gotta fit in a little bit, and you had a real job and all the stuff. And it was funny because I'll tell you this. I don't know how I got out of high school, because like that D plus was like, yes, I'm still in the game. I'm still in the game. I'm dyslexic as the day is long. So reading was really challenging. And, I had a couple teachers that would like pat me on the back and go, we'll get you through this.
Mhm.
But when I was in the real world, and I worked in an advertising agency, and, I was getting moved up because I was really good at the art. I was really good at the production of but my words, I had very few words. I started reading the dictionary, and I was like 20, 21 years old. And I'm like, okay, if I can master 10 words a day, I'm not going to sound like an idiot. So at that point in my life, I was trying really hard to fit in.
Mhm.
Um, I learned a bunch of words, and then I said, screw that. I don't need to fit in. I got my words now. I went back to this kind of attitude that the world can fall down around me as long as I'm doing need to for me and for my family and my kids and all that kind of stuff. I don't give a shit. So
And
yeah,
and also it's what you're doing what you love, right?
right.
You're doing what you love and you're expressing yourself. You're
Yeah.
expressing yourself
Yeah.
in your art. Now, can
No
you
bosses.
explain a little bit? No, right. That's what it is, right? Well, just yourself, right?
Right.
Because there is because let's face it, there is some sort of discipline to this work. There
Yeah.
has to be in
Oh
some
yeah. Yeah.
respects,
Yeah.
right? And so, and in order to produce, you have to, you have to take action. There's just no other way to explain it. You just have to take action. Yeah. I know. I
You got
see
to sit at the
the
table every
studio is
day.
true. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I
The
mean, every
studio is
day. And
gorgeous.
thank you. It's a bit messy, but thank you. I've collected a lot of stuff through the years. But it's funny. I saw a quote the other day, and I should have screenshot it or whatever. But it was something to the effect that people outside of the creative space don't understand that when you say, "Oh no, I can't," or "No, I won't," or I don't want to attend," or "I can't attend because I have art to do," and it's because your art is like gotta come out. If it doesn't come out, we're angry, or we get shitty, or we get whatever. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but I just kind of we get like so anxious if we focus on doing the art. That's all we need. I mean, that and food. That's all we really need to go. So yeah, but you got to do the table every day or every other
Mhm.
day, or you lose your skill because
Yes.
I say it's a gift, but it's really a skill. The more you do it,
Mhm.
gets. And if even if you got this God given talent, if you don't practice it, you're gonna suck. It's you got to do it. So
Right,
yeah,
right.
so there
And
is
I'm
a
sure you learn
discipline.
technique, right? I'm sure because
Right,
the God-given talent is there, and otherwise everyone can do it. But and I'm
right.
not saying draw because anybody can pick up a pencil and
Sure.
draw something, but someone who actually has that passion with the ideas in their head. Because that much I did learn that there's the difference between being able to copy something
Mhm.
to some degree. You don't have to be Rembrandt. You're not copying Rembrandt or Da Vinci, but to copy something to some degree, and someone who actually has the ideas in their head, and then they're going to translate them out into the world. I think that that's a different story, that it's a
And
different thing to do.
you're absolutely right. And I didn't understand that actually not until recently, because both of my children are very creative and can paint and can draw and can do all these things. But they're like, "Mom, I have to look at something," and
Mhm.
and that it like hit me, and I'm like,
Mhm.
they're like, "I have to look at something in order to." I'm like, "Oh, you don't see that shit in your head?" I'm like, "My stuff is just in my head. If I look at something or have a model, I can't do. I mean, I won't say I can't do it, but I don't like it.
Right.
I feel so so like I guess like in handcuffs that you got to do it this way. You got to make it look. Where if I'm just painting, seeing or feeling, that's when the magic happens. But I didn't. I again, like when I was a kid, I thought everybody could do that. I just
Mhm.
assumed because I could do it that everybody did
Right.
it. But
Yeah.
now that I'm 63, I've learned that that's not the case.
Right. It's not the
Um,
case at all. Right.
so I'm glad that I can do that.
And now, can you explain to the audience a little bit what's the difference? Because you are really you won an international award for fantasy art, and so you are considered a fantasy artist, but in a different realm, right? Because you also really do fairy work, or you're an artist of the fae in that realm as well. Because there's fantasy, as in Boris, which is completely different. I don't know if you know who
That's
he is.
completely different. Yeah,
Completely different,
absolutely.
right? Or what was it, Frank Frazetta? That they were like
Completely different.
right? They were
Right.
the fantasy artists, but completely different work. So is it a
Right.
large category fantasy? And does Faye
Oh
go into
yeah,
it, or is it separate?
it does. No, it is in it does go into it. And it's funny that you say that because like Dungeons and Dragons people and all that kind of stuff, they know who you're talking of. A lot of the fairy people, they have no idea. Fortunately, I do know both.
I'm gonna have to credit my husband.
Yeah, there you go.
I have to credit my husband. He had a tattoo made on him moons ago when we were kids, and that's how I found out about who they were. So it's all because of him.
Magnificent artists.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, how it happened for me. I was doing a juried art, whatever, that was doing shows on the East Coast, and somehow, I don't know if you know the names Brian Froud and Alan Lee, but they are artists in the fairy realm as the artists that you just mentioned. Alan Lee was and is what it was like a set designer for Lord of the Rings, and Brian Froud, same thing. If you look his name up, you'll be blown away by the wild magical work that they do. Well, they had picked 25 artists from across the world to be in their coffee table book, like back in 2003 or something like that. And let me tell you, it was funny because when I got the email, and this was, long back when you would turn your computer on and you'd hear all those weird startup noises and all that kind of stuff. Yes. So I get this email, and I was not very proficient at, using my computer back then. I get this email inviting me to be in this coffee table book with people from my perspective were gods. And of course I thought it was spam. So me being the snarky little whatever, I'm like, yeah, and I send back this really obnoxious email. Like, I was this angry little, artist in my head. And somebody's touring with me. Well, holy crap, it was really them. And they're like, no, this is real. And it's funny because I have, pardon me, can I stand up for a second and grab something?
Yeah, go right ahead, of course.
This was the second version. They picked 25 people to be in these books that totally
I'm gonna have to hope to find that book.
My work. And you can. They're absolutely gorgeous. Here's like my little spread. So when this happened in this book, and the book was presented by a gentleman named David Rich in the UK, wonderful man. We went to Europe, we met him, just like such a magical time. And Alan Lee, and then the other one is Brian Froud. Well, it was 2 books, a series of 2. These 2 books totally changed my life. I had no idea that there were people out there that really collected fairies, and that there was this whole fairy underground. Well, somehow, I mean, like, it's been like this magical whatever, because where I live was 10 minutes from the world's largest fairy festival. We attended, and I was a guest art.
Where was it? Because I've gone to the one in Binghamton, New York. I've gone to one in Binghamton, New York.
That one happened, the result after. This was Spoutwood Fairy Festival in Glen Rock, Pennsylvania. 25 years, the most magical event. I mean, I go to like trade shows and wonderful events and stuff now, but this magical event brought 30,000 people to the event in a weekend in a little podunk town in Pennsylvania, where the town couldn't. And what happened was the town couldn't handle the volume of people that were starting to come. People were coming from all over the world. So 25 years, they finally had to like call it quits, because I mean, the town just could not support it. It's this farm community, and there's like tractor trailers pulling up and all this kind of stuff. Brian Froud from the UK came. All these people from all over the world came. So a large portion of the people that are the vendors and the producers of New York were part of Spoutwood.
And that's big. And that's a big one.
Yeah, that's big.
That's a very
big one. It's in June, isn't it? Isn't it in June?
I believe so. Yes. Yeah. I can only tell you that. I can only tell you this. This is an aside, but I was pulled over by the police and I had my fairy wings on. And so
Oh,
you
there
could
you
just
go.
imagine in that small, it was a small town prior to Binghamton. And my daughter was in the car. She was dressed as well. And we both had the wings. And I think that the police officer was going to collapse because he was laughing so hard because there were the
And he
big
just
wings
didn't,
behind me
right.
as I was driving. Yes. And
Yep.
I told him we're going to the Fairy Festival. And I think he was shocked to even hear that there was a Fairy
Like
Festival,
Fairy
let alone that
Festival.
we were on our way there.
Right. And that
Yes.
mom and daughter are dressed and they are going
Yes.
hell or high
And
water.
coming from far away, because we were way east and driving out there. And of course, he had my license in his hand, so he saw where it was. And he couldn't believe we were going that far to this festival. And I said, we're not the only ones. People are coming from all over the world, which is true. It's a huge festival. And they do have them other places in the country. So, and I'm sure you travel
Yeah.
to them
Uh,
because,
and I
you're,
used to.
yeah.
We used to go to so many of them, and I'll even remember back in the very beginning, traveling to. We went to Washington, and to meet Amy Brown and all this stuff. So
Yeah.
it's just been this wonderful journey of, like, and I'll tell you this: it's so funny. My children are grown now, but they say that growing up as a festival child, going to
Hmm.
festivals more than any college, when they graduate from college and they're grown up and all this stuff, they're like, Mom, you know what, doing the festivals and
Hmm.
working at the events and meeting people from all over was a better education than anything that we
Yes.
ever did. And they're so grateful. I mean, and they wear their wings, and my one daughter went to a Ren fair the other day and she's got her wings on from childhood. So it's just been part of our family forever.
Yes. And it's true. It's an invaluable education
Yeah.
because you're meeting
Yeah.
people from all over the world and people with many similar ideas, but yet different at the same time. That's why I
Right.
found that the fairy realm was a little bit different than the other fantasy end. And now I'm going to have to look up those
Mm-hmm.
gentlemen because it's going to be interesting to see what their work looks like, that the gentleman you mentioned, because I know Amy Brown and there's somebody else
Right.
that is out there that's another fairy
Um, it was
artist
Jessica
that,
Galbraith.
yes,
Oh my gosh, so many of Linda Ravenscroft from
mhm,
the UK. Her work is magic.
mhm.
And we all know each other because we've all vended
Yes,
together. We've been in hotels together. I mean,
mhm,
no dinner together. Yeah, I'll never
mhm.
forget when Linda was here, and to me, her work is just it's so luscious. When she was here for our fairy festival, and we all went out, and she was eating her first American hamburger. She never saw such a crazy ass hamburger. She was like, we don't have meals like this over there. So there was just so much joy spent just being fairies together. And it's something that, like I said, my kids just treasure it forever.
And so now you don't go to a lot of the festivals anymore because you're very, very busy with work,
Yeah, I mean,
really. I mean,
work, life, all that kind of stuff. Close by, I'd absolutely go to it. It's funny, my one friend who used to run the one up north just had one in West Virginia. We went to that
mhm,
one last year, and it was so much fun. And it was just it was fun to go as
mhm.
a party goer and not as a vendor. I mean, there's
Yes.
such a difference in that. But what I typically do now are the big trade shows, which
Hmm.
are in the counterculture industry.
Hmm.
Um, and that's like a year of planning. Like the next one that I'll
Hmm.
be doing is in Las Vegas in
Yes.
July. I'm already
Wow.
prepping for that now.
Hmm.
So it's like we have to have, like real inventory and not small one of a kinds and all that kind of
Right.
stuff. So it's a whole different world. I love it. Same business. So
Yes.
um so
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And I would think so because we've gone to trade shows for different types of events, and it is all business there. So it
Yeah.
is different, and you do have to be prepared. Now,
Right.
how do you get your stuff there? Because that's a big traveling
Yeah.
situation.
Well, let me tell you, it's funny, and the show that I go to that in my mind, is the best in our industry. Now I go to other ones, but the one that I'm like married to, that I'm going hell or high water, is Champs trade shows. And for me, my favorite venue of that show is in Vegas. And it's funny because, you've got your 10 by 10 booth, and we fly Southwest. So Southwest, you can bring 50 pounds per bag. I bring one of everything and put it
Mhm.
in the bag and hope that it all gets there safely.
Mhm. Wow.
Because my it's a real business, but my business is too small for me to ship the stuff and
Mhm.
have the union workers unpack it. I mean, like when the union workers unpack your stuff, you're paying thousands of dollars just to have them
Yes.
carry your pallets across the floor.
Right.
So we bring everything in suitcases and
Mhm.
carry them, and hopefully everything arrives on time and we've got it. And yeah.
Because some people actually drive. They take van
Right.
loads. They do this for a living. So they
Right.
actually travel on the road to whatever trade show or festival that they're going to. And it's a lot of work as well. I always admire them
Yeah.
because it is dedication to do that. It's one thing to say,
Yeah.
oh, I want to be an artist, but it's another thing to say I'm going out on the road to be an artist and taking all my things with me. Yeah.
And when I did Sugarloaf Craft Festival, and that was a East Coast, it was a beautiful festival. And I mean, we really miss those types of events. And I did that. Now I didn't drive cross country. As far as I drove by myself
Right.
in the suburban was Ohio. But yeah, I mean, you had your booth in your van, you had all your inventory in your van, and you got to the venue in your jeans that you set up and all that kind of stuff. The next day, then you present like you're the beautiful fairy that you're there to
Yes.
be. But the day before, you are the worker bee and you are doing it, and that is a ton of work. Now we do that a little bit for shows that are not real far away, but to do the Las Vegas show, it is such an intense show where you have buyers from all over the world.
Mhm.
And it's mainly for like counterculture stores or head
Yes.
shops or adult
Yes.
shops or whatever.
Mhm.
So I mean, and I'm not really good with the money part of it and the
Mhm.
calculations and all that kind of stuff. So you really got to be on your game, because it's that's when you're like in like real work mode, where
Right.
this to me
Right. Because
is,
those that come, yeah, those that come are really
yeah,
buying for
yeah,
their
and they can do the
businesses. That's
calculations
what
in their
they're,
head, and I,
and that's why, right. That's why they're there. Yeah.
yeah,
You know, and it
a
is,
lot.
I find it interesting to talk about that because oftentimes, um, artists don't talk about that and other people don't realize what artists go through for their work, that they say I want to be an artist and I want to be an artist that lives off of my art, because it is a business and that
Right,
is very difficult to do. And so when you go to a
right,
gallery, you go to an opening, you see something, but you really don't know how. Even I know because I've actually known a lot of artists, and I've actually volunteered at a facility that was a gallery and an art center.
right.
And it's, oh my gosh, when they would come in, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, these people drove that big piece here and it's just heavy alone to have to bring. And then, then the other people are hanging it up. It's a big job. It's a big business. So, and it's a,
Yeah,
it's a
it's
physical
crazy.
business. Yes.
And for what you're saying, like imagine someone is have, a huge piece of artwork, or a huge piece, a huge painting, and you're on the East Coast, and the West Coast wants it for their gallery. Well, shipping that painting is almost impossible because you're not going to be able to insure it. UPS is definitely going to damage it, and unless you pack it where, and then all of a sudden you're thinking, becomes a freight item that you have to
Yes.
pay $400 to get it
Mhm.
taken across country. So the business part to make it work,
Mhm.
it's a lot. I mean, fortunately, I've done it now my entire life. So one show morphs into the next, and you learn
Mhm.
from your mistakes on this show how to make this next show better. But yeah,
Yes.
you're right. The work, what it takes to get artwork into a gallery, or what it takes to get your, like, my little coloring books into a store,
Yes.
it's brutal. I mean, the
Yes.
selling end of it is like, holy shit, let me just
Mhm.
paint my work and
Yes.
whatever. So
And now it's a little different, right? Now it's a little different because I mean, years ago, I don't want to date myself, but years ago, you had transportation, you had union, you had a lot of
right,
things. If they accepted, if someone found you, more or less, really was what it was, right? Because you had to have some sort of publishing agent to
right, to
represent
get
you
it
at
out
that time.
there.
Now,
Right.
right now, it's a little different because we have these independent publishing houses. We have a lot of things online now. Still not easy, but there are other avenues for an artist. But still, you have to get it somewhere, sometimes physically. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's much easier now to be seen. However, so much of it that if you're not seen and grabbed
Mhm.
quickly, you're just there's a million others just coming right over top it. So it's like before it was hard because you had to get it out there and find a way to get it out there. Now you get out there, but with the millions and millions of artists, you
Yeah.
just kind of yeah. So it's difficult in either way. But yeah, we just keep pushing, and it's that squeaky wheel thing. So
And
you
I
push and
could
push.
see how an artist would be just let me do my work, let me
Thing.
express myself and let me get my voice out there. And
Right.
that's one of the reasons why apart from the the genre of art, but the reason why I have the artist on because it is an expression of the artist and it's their voice and they do have often a message and I think that it's important because I'm sure you know that especially in schools those are like one of the first things they cut, art and music. I don't know why, but that's what they
And it
seem
makes no
to want to cut.
sense.
Right? I know. I just
Right.
right away say, oh, we have no money, let's get rid of this. Or we have little money, we have to get rid of these things. And that's just so expressive of children. And they should have that opportunity and they cut that right away. And yet it's so hard. And I would assume that a lot of people don't realize when they're looking at art that that is the blood, sweat, and tears of that artist, that work.
Right.
So I
And
love
and it's
having
funny
artists on.
what you just said takes it right back to the core. When you said, cutting it in schools and cutting it for children, every single child in the world is an artist until the world beats it out of them. And when you look around and you go to the store or you're somewhere, every single item, every single product is put together via somebody's art brain.
Mhm.
Yet the world tries to beat it out of us, beat it out. Because like I'll hear someone say, "Oh, I can't color. I color outside the lines," or "I was no good." Well, yeah, because people kept telling you that you're doing it wrong. If I was fortunate that I didn't give a shit what anybody thought. I just kept on coloring. I didn't care if I made the sky purple. I didn't care, and I didn't care what someone thought. And I think that's what kept me in us. If I paid attention to the criticism, or if I even heard the
Mhm.
criticism or let it get in there, I would have stopped. Because people criticize all the time. Oh my god, the hate
Right.
mail and the comments, and and it's funny because I paint a lot of things with very breasty women and stuff.
Mhm.
The mail that I used to get over that, over how rude or whatever, I'm
Wow.
still going to do it. I'm still going to do it. And when people stop doing it, you start making yourself smaller,
Mhm.
and that's so
Right.
you got to put the earplugs in. But
Oh, and I'm happy to hear that you did because I'm not one for listening to what other people say because
good.
I don't even like to follow rules, but I certainly don't want to hear what anybody else has to say. But the reality is why would somebody have something to say?
Right.
That always is even as a child, it's like, well, why would they have something to say? If and listen, I am a believer that they have a right to say, I don't particularly care for that. That's wonderful. Then you just keep
That's
walking
fine.
on by, right? Because
Right.
that's really how it should
Right.
be. But no, they feel compelled to have to give their opinion on
And
and their
very
and let you
loudly.
know their feelings. Yes, and let you know their feelings. I just find it amazing, And of course, we're not talking about, illegal things, but we're talking about,
Just
everyday
because they
things.
don't like
People
how
always
I
have
make,
something to
yeah,
say. Yes, yes, yes.
absolutely. And it's funny that you said that because today, this morning, when I went to the gym, you said something. It just, I, I was, went to the post office and I was impatient. And this person was like driving in like really slowly. And I'm sitting there going like, oh my gosh, next thing you know, they're waving. It immediately like snapped me out of it. And it was this older man that he's very old, has a hard time walking. And right there, I was like, Linda, you just judged somebody because you were in a damn hurry. And he's such a nice man and he's waving. And if I hadn't seen him waving, I would have probably been like angry the whole way driving up the road. And it made me think, judging somebody and I don't even know who it is. So I understand how quickly it happens. But when
Mhm.
someone, like you said, takes the time to
Right.
express their ridiculous thoughts, it's like, oh my gosh, I was just having a stupid moment in my brain,
Right,
had
right.
to check myself. So
And it
yeah,
is a
yeah,
checking, right? It is a checking because it can
right.
happen to any of us. So it is a checking. I mean, that's where, right? I guess that's where the growth comes from. That's where evolution comes from. That we take a moment to step back and say, wait a minute, this is not how it should be, and I've made this judgment. And would that the world would do that all the time. We
That's what
wouldn't
I
have
was
the
saying. I
problems
was
we
so
have.
glad I saw his little hand go up and I was like, oh my gosh. And then I'm like waving. I felt really badly, but I was like, it made me realize just to take a breath. Just, you don't have to be in a hurry. And that must be that East Coast side of me, just is always, pushing to get to the next step.
In a
But
rush. Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. And so being that you say that, where do you go from here now? I mean, I know you have July plans, you're always planning those types of things, but where do you go with your art? What where do you see yourself going with your art?
That's a great question. I don't really have uh plans. What I do know that I like to do, the thing that I like to do is make usable items. So it's funny because right now I'm in the process of trying to source a company to make umbrellas. Because I'm like, it's something I have a fancy umbrella with my artwork on
Yes.
it. And like people stop me and say, where'd you get that? Or whatever. So
Yes.
I try to so for the past 3 months, I've been trying to source a company that will make an umbrella with my artwork on it that I like. I just got another sample and I was like, oh Lord, I don't like that
Hmm.
one. Um, Changing the subject. One thing that I am in the process of making, I just finished doing the Zodiac series. And my
Oh.
daughter is a designer. So we are working on an adult activity book with the Zodiac
Mhm.
images. So it'll have like their artwork, it'll have
Mhm.
a coloring page, it'll have little crossword puzzles on it.
Mhm.
So that'll be like in the next 6 months is because doing those books takes forever. We've done three
Yeah.
of them, and this one we just started. So in the nearest future, we have that. But as far as like plans for the next year, 2 years, I have no idea. I
So now where can people get these things? I mean, all right, so the umbrella is still in the works, but and I know you have a website, which I'm going to be listing that in the description because I'm sure I'm going to hear from people, especially when they hear, wearable art, because people love
yeah,
to wear things and to
right,
have, the mugs and the bags. I mean, I myself like to carry
right,
those
right,
too.
right.
So, where do you have like a shop on your website?
Yeah, that
Where
I
can they
do.
get it?
I do. They can get it from the website. It's
Mhm.
fairielandz.com, and I'll send you all that
Mhm.
information. So you can get it on the website. We sometimes throw things up on eBay, but we have a distributor that sells the big items. Like we have
Mhm.
glass and all these big fancy things.
Yes.
Now they sell stuff in big
Mhm.
quantities
Mhm.
to head shops or
Right, the stores themselves,
gift
yeah.
stores and all that kind of stuff. So that's why it's funny. Like when we're out at the town where I haven't been, like I'll walk in like those stores. I'm like, oh my gosh, there it is, and
Yes.
stuff. So I try to. It's really hard to keep a catalog of where things are. Um, but we do that often, and like we'll sign stuff or whatever. But the website is the easiest way because I manage that. I see all the orders that come in, and
Right.
I'll hand sign them and put a personal
Mhm.
note in or whatever. And it's
Oh,
sometimes it's really
nice.
interesting when it'll be somebody that I actually know, and I'm like, oh my gosh,
Oh,
that's crazy. So that's always fun. But so yeah.
and now another question, do you teach other people art or you're just so busy that you don't?
Well, and no. Teach for money. Um, have done some like puff and paints and teaching classes for some of the dispensaries in our area where they'll do a puff and paint night and they charge for it and the money goes to the
Mhm.
company or whoever. I just don't, but I'll teach somebody in 3 hours how to
Mhm.
manipulate watercolors or whatever. And in the winter, I was doing on, I think on Instagram and TikTok and stuff. Every Friday night, I was doing a little
Mhm.
painting. It wasn't really a class, but I was like, I'll show you how I do
Right.
thing. I'll show you how I do a flower. So I'll do it like that. But as far as being a teacher with a schedule, no. Rules like that are like
Right.
beyond me.
Yeah.
So no. But if somebody wants to learn something, they are more than welcome to call me or text me
Mhm.
or whatever,
Right.
and I'll tell them what I know. I
Mhm.
mean, I don't want
Oh,
to
that's
die
nice
with
of
this
you.
stuff in my
Yes.
head. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Now, you said your daughter's a designer. Do both your children work in the art world?
Yes, they do. My one, I have two girls, and my youngest, she graduated with a design degree, whatever that is. She went to Syracuse, and she works for a government agency that does like design work for national parks and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And then the my older child, she works for a company in New York. I believe the company name is Buck, and they do videography and TV
Right.
commercials and all that kind of stuff. And she's a producer. So I don't really know what they do.
Mhm.
They do stuff on their computer, which I'm allergic
Mhm.
to my
Oh,
computer.
yes.
But but yeah, I mean, they grew up in it, and then they both
Mhm.
did paint and draw and all that kind of stuff. But for real money, they do graphics and that sort of artwork.
Yeah,
They
which
didn't do this
like
route.
for the young. Right, no, and a
Yeah,
lot of the young do, right? They're very good on the computer.
right, right,
That's just been a part of them. So
right,
completely
right.
different
They're
from
always
us.
schooling me on like my Instagram and stuff like, "Oh mom, please don't post that." Or, "Oh mom, let me
Yeah.
fix that for you." So,
Oh, no, mine will come and say, you need a stone and chisel. That's what you need, a
right,
stone and chisel. That's what you need because she tells me that I'm totally illiterate when it comes to the computer. So, and of course, when anything that has to do with drawing or design or anything like that, because it is a different type of system, artists use a different type of system. That is really all the young are really on their technology to do their drawing, which I find fascinating but scary at the same time. So,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
which is funny because recently I heard that there was a little bit of a dispute about now AI creating art. And is that art? Is it not? I don't know. Those are these big
They're
philosophical
big
questions that
questions.
are out there, right? Yes, they are.
Right,
Right. And
right.
but I guess we do have to evolve too. So I don't know how it's all done. I don't know. I don't know. Does the AI create the whole thing itself? I'm not sure, but I know that there was recently something about that when it came to artwork in particular. People were talking about that. So, and before I know it was before this conversation, quite a few years back, it was just using technology to create or
Right,
manipulate your drawing was already an issue, and now this is something different. So, but I guess we should have to
right.
see how everything unfolds, right? I mean, um,
It,
as long as the fairies
exactly.
are in the world, right? As long as the
That's
fairies are
all that
there, right? Because
matters.
it's still right. That's all that matters. It's interesting they say that. I'm going to have to see now if there are other artists that create fairies. Did they always see fairies? Did they always, have that
So
realm
I
in front
know
of them? It's interesting.
I know I know for a fact some of the, and I won't throw any names out there because I don't want
Right,
to throw anybody under the bus.
right, right, right.
There are some people that I've done shows with that absolutely have the same mindset, like, I mean, not as mine, but like mine, where they know that they have communed with fairies. And then there are others that did not, and actually that like ate at them, and they even had to throw in the towel and said, "Forget it.
Mhm.
I can't." But yeah. So there are. You'll
Well,
find them.
I would, I would think so. Well, I know that I had a conversation with someone as a writer, and she wrote about fairies, and I don't know, she one day we were chatting. I had really wanted her on the show, but she was incensed because she wanted me to understand that she really believed in them. And I said, but I don't doubt that you do. I never said you
Right,
didn't believe in them because, that's your writing. So I would hope that you would want to come on. She didn't want to, but that was a whole other story. But, I never said that she didn't believe in them. In fact, I think it's
right,
wonderful because, like, I personally, how would I be able to create them if they weren't in my vision? Whether that vision is in my
right,
in my mind or in front of my eyes, I don't know how I would be able to
right,
do that. So,
right.
but it's interesting. But I want to thank you so much for coming on, for taking the time, because I know you're
Thank
so busy.
you.
And I so appreciate it. We juggled a little bit to get you on. I'm thrilled
Thank
that we
you.
were able to speak with you and for you to give us all this wonderful information about the other side of the art world too, because often
Yeah,
artists don't talk about that.
right, right. Well, I really appreciate you reaching out to me and asking. This was fun. And yeah, if anybody has any questions, have at it. I'll help however I can.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Linda. It was fabulous.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.